Welcome to Part B of the interactive lesson. We will pick it up with the enhanced features that include narration.
I'll be showing you two different ways to record your narration. Now, in an interactive lesson, such as the one you're viewing and such as the one that you're going to be creating, narration is a critical element, almost as critical as the action buttons that we just learned. For the first way to record a narration, it's called recording audio. And you'll do that simply by clicking on the Insert tab and scrolling over to where it says Audio. Now, remember we looked at this before when we used clip art audio. Okay. In other words, we were able to pick up one of these small sounds that PowerPoint provides for us in the clip art gallery. This time, however, we're going to record audio. It's the bottom one in the drop-down menu. You click on that, and the dialog box that says Record Sound pops up. Now, you're used to seeing things like this. If you click on the red button, it's going to start recording. Now, you need to have a good microphone in front of you. I think most computers have these now. They could be built into your computer. They could be built into your webcam, or you could buy a simple desktop microphone that you could use. But obviously, to record, you got to have a microphone. Now, I like to use the headsets because I can hear myself through the headset, and I have the the microphone right in front of me. So if you click on the red button, it will start recording what it calls the total sound length. It's pretty much in seconds, so you get an idea how long your narration is going to be on every slide. When you're done with the narration, you can click on the blue stop button. That will stop recording. And then you can click on OK. And what will happen at this point is it will drop a speaker icon onto your slide. Okay, that speaker icon can be moved around the slide to get it out of the way, and you can then save your presentation so that you can the student can easily listen to it. Now, we're going to talk about, once you have that speaker on your slide, some of the things that you can do with it, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. So again, if you want to, you can pause now. You can go to your interactive lesson and try to record a sound onto a slide, just as a bit of practice. When you're done getting the speaker there, go ahead and come back to this presentation, and we'll look at what we do next with it. When the speaker is initially placed on your slide, as it shows you here with the anchors around it, you will see that there's a lightning bolt on it, as I mentioned earlier. If you look at the previous slide, you'll see a lightning bolt there. What that basically means is that the student or the user or the viewer must click on that speaker to listen to the narration. Now, you can think of a million cases in which you would want to do that. You narrate something, you put it on a slide, but you don't want it to start until the viewer actually clicks on it to listen to it. For an interactive lesson, though, we need to have that narration start as soon as the slide appears. Again, the presentation you're looking at now with me, it's set up like that. So we need to change that, set the animation so that it starts with the slide when it comes up. Now, the way you do that is after you want to make sure that the speaker has the anchors around it, so it's been selected. And you go up to the Animations tab at the top and scoot over to where it says Reorder Animation. you want to click on the feature or the instruction that says move earlier. Okay, when you do that, it will turn that lightning bolt, that little notation there, from a lightning bolt to the number 1. Again, what that means is that it's going to be the first thing that pops up, but it still won't start with the new slide until we turn that to a 0, like you see here. And the way you do that is over on the left side where it says Start with Previous. Click that down menu, and normally it's going to say Start on a click. So again, the student would still have to click it. If you change that to Start with Previous, like I did here, that little box turns to a 0. And that's your indication that the animation will happen as soon as the slide comes up. And again, for an interactive lesson, that's what you're going to want to do. So as a little quick summary here, you can identify when to play your narration. And you do that by clicking on the speaker, going up to the Animations tab, go over and select Move Early, and then in the Start drop-down, you want to select With Previous. Okay, so once you do that, then that again will turn to a 0. You can save your presentation. When you launch this slide, when it moves from slide 8 to slide 9 or whatever slide has got the narration on it, it will start as soon as the slide appears. And that's what we want to do for the interactive lesson. Now, that's one way to do a narration. I happen to think it's the better way because if you, for example, decide you want to change a slide, you want to add a bullet to it or take a bullet out, or if you find out that you just don't like the way this particular 20 seconds of narration sounds, all you have to do to recapture it is to click on the speaker, hit the delete button, and it goes away. And then you can go right back in and insert audio, record sound, and re-record it. Again, same thing. If you added a new bullet, you would go in, click on the speaker, delete it, and go back in and re-narrate it. Now, the second way that we're going to look at adding narration is to record a slideshow. So let's go ahead and go on to the next slide right now, and we'll take a look at how that's done. When you selected the insert and then to record audio, again, you are adding your narration one slide at a time. If you have a good script laid out and you just want to record the slideshow based on the script, you can go into the slideshow tab at the top, go to where it says Record Slideshow, and you probably want to click on or leave both of those boxes clicked. The slide and animation timings, what happens is as you're narrating and you're changing slides, the PowerPoint is actually tracking the whole, the whole presentation. So this is the other way in which you can record a slideshow. Again, you're going to hit the slideshow tab, record the slideshow, and start recording. At this point, you're going to narrate the entire presentation from start to finish, and then save the final version. The advantage of recording the slideshow is that it does appear a lot smoother. You can move, you can transition more easily from one slide to the next. But you must include, but the problem with recording the slideshow is that if you decide to make a change somewhere in the presentation, you add another slide or whatever, you're going to have to re-record the whole thing. So that's why my preference And my recommendation to you is to use the insert sound rather than the record the slideshow, but it's your choice. For EDUC 6610, you must include the audio narration for your interactive lesson. Now, at this point, we have gone through all but one of the enhanced features for making an interactive lesson. We've looked at templates, word art, text color. We've looked at drawing tools, slide transitions. We looked at the very important action buttons, and we've looked at how to narrate. Now, if you think about this for a second, the one thing that we're missing is the command that restricts the student's control. Because right now, if you start on slide number 1 of this presentation, and you kept clicking the next slide, you would never be forced to listen to any of the presentation, any of the narration. All right, so, it doesn't matter right now whether you click on the arrow keys, the action buttons that we put in there, or you hit the space bar. You're going to proceed one slide after the other in PowerPoint. So what we want to show you next is how you can control that. Okay, so when you're ready, go ahead and click on the next slide. The final command that makes an interactive lesson interactive is called the kiosk browser. Now, you probably know what a kiosk is. If you've ever been to a shopping mall or to Disney World, it's that little information center that you can go to and touch a button or click a mouse or something and, find out where JCPenney's is, or find out how long the line is at Toy Story if you're at Disney World. The kiosk browser produces or creates the self-running presentation. And again, it makes the interactive lesson possible by deactivating the keyboard. So once you're in the kiosk mode, the keyboard doesn't work, the mouse doesn't work. The only key that you can hit on the keyboard that will do anything is the escape key, which will get you out of the presentation. Other than that, the student has to use the action buttons to move from slide to slide. That's why I told you and had that caveat many times here. When you're in an interactive lesson, you must have a way off of every slide. There must be an action button on every slide. Otherwise, the kiosk mode will cause the presentation to simply stop. It'll just sit there because it won't allow you to continue. That's kind of where the escape key comes in. All right, so to set up the kiosk mode, you go to the slideshow tab, and you go over to the setup slideshow, and you will get that dialog box that you see on the screen. Now, when you first bring it up, you'll notice that the little radio button that says presented by a speaker is clicked, because that's where you're going to be 99.9% of the time. That's how you use PowerPoint when you're in a traditional classroom environment. But what we want now is to select Browse at a Kiosk. Again, now listen, don't do this. Don't turn it into the kiosk mode until you're actually done with the PowerPoint presentation and are ready to deliver it to the student. Don't do this while you're in the edit mode. Don't do this while you're creating the PowerPoint presentation, because it's difficult to get in and out. Okay, so once you do that, you can change this over into the kiosk mode. Click on OK, and your interactive lesson should pretty well be finished. All right, let's take a look at the last slide in this presentation. Before we end the presentation, I want to recap the features that we looked at, and then we're going to take a quick look at the components of the interactive lesson. And make sure you have them all for your own development of your own interactive lesson. We'll begin by looking at slide 18 in our interactive lesson, the inner planets of the solar system, just as a way of recapping that we looked at how to create your own master slide. Okay, so be sure you consider doing that when you create your interactive lesson. You don't have to. We looked at word art, and we looked at text color, all of them shown in this particular slide. Okay, so if you need to recap how to do that, you can go back into the presentation, but for the most part, this is fairly simple and straightforward. Here's an example of the slide transitions used between slide 32 and 33. In this particular case, I used the slide transition called a push, which basically just brings up the next slide from the bottom of the screen. Notice that I also put a sound transition in there. Of course, you can't hear that now. And I put a duration for the slide transition of 4.5 seconds. So this is going to go fairly slowly. You probably don't want to go that slowly, but I needed to move it slow enough so I could capture the image myself and show it to you here. So use slide transitions in your interactive lesson. On this slide, which is basically slide 33 in your interactive lesson, just again a recap of what we did to make this an interactive lesson by using the action buttons and the hide slides to create a series of 3 slides, one of which presents a question, one of which offers you a no answer, and the other offers you the correct answer. Take a look at this construct, make sure that you're ready to go using this in your own presentation. Finally, 2 key components of an interactive lesson to make it work correctly is the ability to narrate. So you see a speaker in the upper right-hand corner of this presentation. That's the narration that I'm doing now. Remember how you did that with an insert audio and then record the audio. That's the preferred method. There was another way to do it. Under the slideshow, you can record the entire slideshow from start to finish. It's your choice which way you want to go. I highly recommend to use the insert audio so that corrections are done easier. And then finally, after you're done creating your interactive lesson and all the slides are in the proper order and they all work correctly, you would set up your show and browse at a kiosk so that the student actually has to use the action buttons to navigate through your presentation. At the outset of your interactive lesson, after you've done the welcome and the intro and the lesson goals and so forth, the next thing that you should be looking to do is test their prior knowledge. So do that with a series of assessment slides. You know how they set them up now. It's a slide with the question and then the right answer and the wrong answer. And decide what you want to do if their prior knowledge is not up to your expectations. if they don't know which planet is closest to the sun, you might need to send them back to another presentation, a previous presentation. And you certainly can do that directly from here, right? Remember how to do that, where you can set up an action button to go to another file. So as soon as you do that, I would say ask them a series of 3 or 4 questions so that you can gauge their prior knowledge before you actually get into the content of the current lesson. Now, the primary purpose of the interactive lesson is to deliver content, not just to, send them around back and forth using your assessment slides. So here's an example of a content slide from Mercury. And remember, you're going to narrate this now the same way as I'm doing to this presentation. So when you do the narration, you don't want to necessarily read everything that's on the slide. All right, you want to highlight the information. You want to present new information. You want to couch it in terms of how your learners are going to understand the concepts that you're giving them. So as you're presenting your interactive lesson, you want to give them enough time to read the content material on the slide, but also not too much time that they're going to kind of get bored. All right. So after you've presented a series of content slides, maybe 3 or 4 in a row. So you might present Mercury, then Venus, and then Mars, and then Earth. You're going to go back and you're going to provide some formative assessment. So again, some more content on questions on a slide like the one here. So we have reviewed the 4 inner planets, and now we're going to ask them questions to make sure they understood the information. And that's the way your interactive lesson will flow. So content information, some formative assessment slides, maybe some more content information, followed by some more formative assessment slides. And again, it's up to you as the teacher to figure out what you want to do if they have not successfully answered your assessment slide. You could send them back to the beginning of this portion of the content, maybe send them back 3 or 4 slides, make them review it again, or you could give them the answer and let them continue. That's up to you. But this is the heart of the interactive lesson is the content slides and the new information that you're going to present. Your interactive lesson needs to have a summative assessment. Now, you have your choices of how you want to do that. This example is in your interactive lesson. It's a slide, looks like 38. You can use this as one way to do it. You could have them answer these questions, and you could provide answers to them inside the lesson itself. Or you can ask them to click on a link and send them to a Microsoft Word document that is a handout or a worksheet that they have to fill out, complete, and send to you. Either way, be sure you have a summative assessment as part of your interactive lesson. The final component that I want to see in everybody's interactive lesson is a single slide, obviously toward the end of the presentation, that contains follow-up activities. Now again, these can be URLs, these can be web addresses like they are on this example, or they could be links to another PowerPoint presentation if you want them to see something else, or a link to a Word document that might have a study guide on it. It's up to you, but be sure you have, toward the end of your presentation, the end of your lesson, some follow-up activities for those students that perhaps don't learn best visually or auditorially. They need to maybe get their hands on something. So this first one, for example, called Planet Facts, is a very hands-on kind of a website. All right, it allows the students to click on different things and view more about the planets. And so those are the kinds of activities you need to find online include them in your interactive lesson.
This concludes our video on how to create the interactive lesson. Again, it's in two parts, Part A and Part B, so be sure you watch both of them before you start developing your PowerPoint presentation, which will result in the interactive lesson. The interactive lesson is probably, or arguably, the most versatile of the advanced instructional materials that you will create for our course. So please expect this one to take the most amount of time as you decide which lesson objectives are best served through a visual presentation like this. Thanks for your attention, and good luck on the creation of your interactive lesson.